What if I told you how to get 1 million followers in 30 days? Gave you the exact blueprint for how to build a brand so successful that you became an innovation strategist for Fortune 500 companies, other global brands, and celebrities to unlock value and transform their businesses.
Hey, I'm Brendan Kane, the author of 1 Million Followers, How I Built a Massive Social Audience in 30 Days, and Hook Point, How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World. And this is the Fit Pharmacist Healthcare Podcast.
I see my victory so clear. I see my victory so clear. And today, we break through. And today, we break through. And today, we break through. And today.
Yes, it is true, guys. I am so freaking excited for this because we have literally the guy, an outside the box thinker who empowers brands to scale, expand, and accelerate their businesses and influence. The only Brendan J. Kane. Dude, I am such a huge fan. And to give you guys how great his content is, I listened to his book on Audible and it was so good. I actually bought a copy so I could take even more notes because he packs so much value into what he does, and his authenticity of passion for helping people just on point. So man, thank you so much for being here and for your time. I'm a huge fan.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's great to connect with you and everybody that's listening to this.
So I just want to dive in and unpack something real quick because like I said, you pack so much value, not only in your outstanding books, but also in all the work that you do, that it's just really the highlight of how you succeed in so many aspects of your career. And really what I think is, regardless of all the accolades and the incredible success that you create for other people, I feel that the core foundation of your brand is what impresses me the most about you. And it's that you reek of integrity and your focus on service and over delivering value is literally second to none. And as you say in the book, Hook Point, authenticity is the glue that holds your brand together. And you, my friend, live that. So first and foremost, thank you for being such a gift to everyone in this world. It's absolutely incredible.
I appreciate the kind words.
So I really want to start with a concept question, which is how I want to really maximize your time and the people listening and watching this on YouTube in this interview. Because literally, without question, you are the best in the world at what you do in getting people's attention. An essential first step, because regardless of like the product or service that any of us are making, even if it's the best in the world, if people don't know about it, it doesn't really matter, which is what you talk about in your book. And one concept I just wanted to share is that building a brand is a domino effect process. Mastering the first domino in the process will maximize your momentum. So as you consistently grow, you create that snowball effect that you describe so well in your book of leveraging both offline and online connections. And I really enjoyed that one piece that you shared so much about in your book. I was wondering if you could just give us an example of your career of that kind of scaling process of leveraging an online connection to get an offline connection and interweaving those to create and scale your brand to help your clients.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the world we live in today is everybody's so caught up with social media, and social media is a very powerful tool. We do a lot of work. We have a lot of success there. But I think that, and I'm not saying it's for everybody. I first want to say is like in everything that we do, there's many ways to be successful. We present many different options from not just myself, but world experts. Some of them conflict because we just see that there's different approaches to success, and we don't try and put anybody into a box. We don't try and say this is the only way to be successful. So I just want to kind of set that stage.
Yes.
But one of the things that really fascinates me and where we've had success for our clients and also for my personal brand is really looking at the holistic picture, not just looking at social media following or social media content, which is valuable, but how does that play off of the offline world? So the first place that I started in this was the movie industry. And when I started, I was really tasked with understanding how to leverage digital audiences, digital traffic, social media platforms at the earliest infancy stages back in 2005 to force an offline conversion or an offline experience, which is showing up at the movie theater. So that's the perfect example is you leverage, obviously in COVID, it's completely shifted, but at the time, it's, how do we leverage all this online attention to drive it offline for this experience? So that's one example. Also, working with like a musician, like a Taylor Swift, same thing. She built a massive social audience, master at communication, master at social media, and a lot of her commerce and revenue is derived off of offline experiences. How do we get people to buy concert tickets? And then when they're in the concert experience, high state of motivation, we sell merchandise. So that's another example. With my personal brand, I looked at the concept of the hook point of generating 1 million followers in 30 days as a hook to get a publishing deal, to sign with the literary agent, get a publishing deal. So that book lives in an offline world. Yes, there's an ebook and an audiobook. I would still kind of consider that like an offline mechanism, even though part of it is digital, to afford me the opportunity to get on large stages, to get on television, to get on print, to get on podcasts, so that my brand can syndicate and connect across different mediums. So the holistic approach of all of that together can raise up the brand and the connection that you're trying to have with your audience.
That is so spot on, Brendan. And the other thing that I wanted to tie that into is what you said. It's so important to integrate both the offline and the online. And once people start to see how powerful hook points are, they can either create that as a tool or they can go too deep into the weeds. Something that in your book you talked about as really being hook point overwhelm and just focusing on that way too much. So with the focus of hook points, let's say someone gets really good at creating them, but they ignore and don't consistently grow the foundation of their brand. That is them being a personal brand, them, the person, the source of the value that they're looking to give and serve their audience with. So hook points only work if you have a firm personal brand foundation. And without that, you'll just be like a flash in the pan. And something that popped in my mind when I was listening to your book and reading it was that people want filet. They don't just want aroma. So one analogy that I got from what you were writing in your book is if you entice people, in a mall, like you have a restaurant, if you entice them with tasty smells and lead them into an empty kitchen that has no food, they're not only going to be ticked off, they're never going to come back. And even worse, they'll feel like they were duped and they'll tell others to warn them to avoid you from making the same mistake that they did. And you're hungry. So it's like lose, lose, lose. So what I learned in your book and what I want to really break down and invite you to share is from what I read, there's two things that you really have to successfully master to successfully script your brand: knowing yourself and knowing your audience. So the question that I want to ask you, because you've worked with Taylor Swift, you even at one point in your book shared that you talked with Jason Statham and that was a potential lead. But in your experience with all the myriad of businesses and brands and celebrities, where do you feel between knowing yourself and knowing your audience? Where do you feel most people fall short in building their brand?
I think they fall short in both. And it's, you do need to have a foundation, but I think that there's an overemphasis on the foundation in your brand and branding and like knowing, like Simon Sinek, I respect, and there is value to it. But, I think the person that put it the best to me is one of my mentors was the head, one of the top guys at Live Nation and Def Jam Records. And he's like, you got to stop focusing on building a brand and figure out how to turn it in. What is your business? What is the value you're providing? Because I see so many people focusing on branding, their mission statement, their why, their tone, their colors, when they don't even have a business. And like, first and foremost, you got to figure out, like, how do I grab somebody's attention? What is the value that I'm offering to the world? What is the biggest pain point I'm solving? And figuring that first, and then building the foundational piece under it. Now, I can give you some examples of that because I think it's critically important. Like when I came up with a concept of 1 million followers in 30 days, I came up with it as a hook. I didn't really know what the brand foundational piece was when I first did it. And even when I published the book, I kind of figured it out after the fact. I knew there was something of value. I knew that there was some strategies and things that I could, express to people, but I wasn't really thinking about the underlying brand foundation. And that underlying brand foundation shifted with Hook Point, because after 16 years, I mean, actually, it's probably like 18 years of experimenting with businesses and everything, I finally realized that hook points and having people grab attention at the highest level to stand out is really what my core skill set is and what I'm best at. Now, does that minimize what I did with 1 million followers? Does it dilute the value in 1 million followers? No, not at all. But I think that there's people get so caught up in what is my brand? What does my brand mean? And all of those things before they really even know who they are, before they even know the value that they're providing into the world. And I'm the perfect case. Like, did I really know what I was doing when I was, getting high up, like getting a meeting with Jason Statham or getting Taylor Swift as a client or MTV? No, I didn't realize that until like 2 or 3 years ago when I started conceptualizing Hook Point. Now, to your point, does that mean that you go off and mislead people and do things that you don't believe in or you don't think you're good at? No, you don't want to do that. But there is some experimentation of understand. Like, the only way you understand what you're good at is to go out and try things and fail at a bunch of shit. And there's going to be stuff that you fail at because it's new to you and you just have to practice to get better. And there's some things that you're going to fail at because that's just not the direction that you meant to take. So that's, one element of it. And then the second element is like, just where are the greatest pain points that you can solve for people? It's like, and I don't know if it's in my books. Like, I created the earliest version of like Hook Point like 10 years ago, and it wasn't called Hook Point or anything. And I think it was like the secret to connecting with A-list celebrities or something. And like, I gave the analogy of somebody like an actress or a screenwriter starting off in the film industry, because I started off there as well. And it's so competitive. The entertainment industry is one of the most competitive markets. And I say, like, if you really want to foster connections at the highest level, you need to figure out like, what is your greatest solution, or what is your greatest value that you can provide. And, the screenwriter or the actress may say, oh, it's my acting ability, or it's my screenwriting ability. Now, at the level of entry, it's most likely not that. Unless you're the best screenwriter ever and you've got amazing script, then sure. But it may be the fact that you grew up around dogs and you're amazing with dogs and can train the studio executive's dog or take it for a walk, or you're an amazing babysitter, or you just connect with people and make them laugh. Finding that initial connection with people where they, trust you. In my case, I showed up in LA wanting to be a film producer. And when I showed up, and people would ask me, well, what do you want to do? Because I was started at the bottom making coffee and copies. I was like, I want to produce films. And I could see people's eyes roll over and glaze because I was one of a million people. So I had to take a step back and really analyze, okay, well, what is my hook point? How can I grab the attention of a studio executive? Just grab the attention of a Jason Statham, these people that have, so much demand for their time. And when I actually sat back and observed what was going on in the industry and also in the studio I was working for, I would notice that when we finished a film, something that we spend tens of millions of dollars on, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars on a piece of content, there was a sense of anxiety that would overcome. It's because it's like, okay, we just spent all this money. Now we got to take an asset that nobody knows about, because the movies I weren't working on are the Avengers and stuff like that. And in most cases, people aren't working on those movies. And we need 100 million people or hundreds of millions of people around the world to know about this asset in 6 months. So then I was like, okay, well, I just spent my time in college figuring out how to launch digital companies to learn about business, because they didn't teach me anything about business in film school. So I started seeding that hook point. I said, hey, I know you guys got this big movie coming out. I know it's a big investment for you. And I know our marketing budget is limited compared to the other movies in the market. I just spent, the past few years creating internet companies. I know how to tap into digital audiences and, people with influence for little to no cost to syndicate your trailer, your movies to millions of people. Would that be of value to you? And the answer was yes. So that started going from making coffees to getting invited to executive board meetings, to creating my own digital division, to getting invited to celebrities' houses to speak through all these things. Not because I was the smartest person. I'm not the smartest person. It's because I tapped in and understood a pain point that people are experiencing. And I wanted to be a film producer, but I saw an opportunity of another skill set that I had to get my foot in the door. Now, ultimately, I decided to just continue pursuing that path because the film industry was more corporate than I was hoping for. It wasn't as creative as I was hoping, but I could have leveraged, and I can still do it to this day, all of those connections that I built to get movies made if I wanted to. So I started with this different perspective of how I can offer value other than what I came to LA for, to really get that foot in the door.
That is absolutely phenomenal. And it leads perfectly into a question that I really want to ask you from what you wrote on the book and just seeing your career. Because like you said, you started, Coffee Boy, all that stuff, but now you're working at the top, like on TV, you're all over the place, you're omnipresent. And once you realized your skill, that you were really good and you had an innate ability to find that pain point and leverage that as a hook point, eventually you developed that, you tried some stuff that didn't work. And once that caught traction and you really started to grow, my question that I really want to ask you is how important in your journey, in any brand's journey, is confidence? Because once you start seeing the effects and you start really putting your money where your mouth is and talking to these huge clients that have so many, boundaries and layers of protection and everything else, how important is that when you're building your brand and scaling?
Well, I think that there's two ways I want to tackle that question. Number one is going into important meetings with a celebrity, CEO of a major organization. People ask me, well, how do you approach that? Are you nervous? And maybe I'm nervous like going into the meeting or like the first minute, but I go just quickly to, how do I understand who this person is? Even if you see somebody on TV, it doesn't mean that's the real person, or it doesn't mean it's the person showing up on that day at that particular time. So I just go into value mode. Who is this person? What are their greatest challenges? What are the biggest fears? What are their biggest aspirations? How do they perceive the world? And then I'm just trying to put the pieces together based on what they're saying is, how can I help this person? Whether it's something that I offer them, or it's something, an introduction I'll make, or a suggestion, I'm just in problem solving mode. That's number one. I'm sure I may come off super confident, but I'm just in my head trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle. And that's where my focus goes. And that's what allows me to close big deals. Again, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I just kind of go in and just I never go in trying to sell something. I won't go in with a deck. I won't go with a presentation, and I won't even start the conversation. I will start by asking questions to really get some intel of who this person really is and how I can help them on whatever journey they're going on. The second part about confidence, I think it's less about confidence and more about mindset. Because listen, I have a tremendous amount of self-doubt and I question myself all the time. Like confidence goes into it, but I think it's more about having a foundational piece of a mindset of I'm always going to be learning. I'm always going to, have, I don't want to use the word failure, but, I'm always going to do things that may not pan out the way that I exactly see them, but I'm going to learn from that and keep going through it over and over again. But then also understanding that everybody has their down days. Everybody has points where they want to give up, that things get really tough and challenging. And that's a part of the process, is everybody looks at the glamorous side of people becoming millionaires or billionaires and they think, oh, it just comes so super easy to them. When it doesn't. Everybody's a human being. Everybody has struggled to get to a successful level. Everybody has struggled to maintain that level of success. So I look at it as more of a mindset than, hey, let's just build confidence within individuals.
Yes, I think that's really well said. And speaking to that level of mindset of it, it looks easy with the last year plus with everything that's going on with COVID and everything else. Most of the people listening or watching to this interview have been on the front lines. They're pharmacists, pharmacy students, physicians, you name it. So they're in uncertain situations with demands they've never faced, with preparations they've never even anticipated before. And they have all these pressures to perform at a high level because literally lives are at risk. So I think that is an extreme case, but our current reality. But when you're building a brand and really trying to get those hook points to get your message and provide that value and service, whether it's patients in your career or if you're building a brand on the side or whatever that might be, I think you hit the nail on the head with having to have that mindset, because like you so perfectly said, all of us are human. We have our self-doubts, we have our limiting beliefs. And it's not that you have to ignore them or display them, but confidence and really courage is not moving forward when fear is gone, but it's going forward despite having that fear. And I think having that mindset is really where confidence comes from, doing that work to equip yourself so you can keep going forward when those times get challenging or tough, or you feel like you're not prepared to handle that.
100%. Yeah.
Awesome. So I just want to ask you a main question regarding a hook point, and to wrap up this interview. When someone is considering that they have this piece of value, they have this skill that they're really trying to develop in service of others to attract their ideal audience, they've done the work. So going back to the beginning of this book and the beginning of this interview, they've taken the time to really understand themselves and what they're good at. They've taken the time of who can benefit from this value. And then they start on this journey of, okay, I need to create a brand and all the things that we talked about that people get too caught up in, the logo color and things like that. Instead of that, and really going into the value piece and really looking at it as a business, what would you recommend is the first place to start in developing that so you can create a hook point so that when you do read this book and put it into practice, because it does work, it's phenomenal, and then you start getting people coming in, where do you think is the best place for people to start on that journey in terms of creating a business or scaling that value to help more than one person?
Well, there's a few different elements to it. Identifying that key pain point first is critical. Without that, you're going to fail. One of the exercises I give our clients is, and one of the questions I ask when we're developing hook points for our clients is, what is the greatest conscious fear that keep people up at night, the core customers that you're trying to go after? Because you have to start there. And then once you have that, then you have the foundation for your hook point. But it's not necessarily all about the content, it's about the context. How are you articulating how you're going to solve that pain point for your client? That's the next step. And it may take several iterations of, figuring out the best way to contextualize that to grab attention. For us, with 1 million followers and with Hook Point, we're constantly testing new ways to contextualize the value provided in our books, in our consulting service, to connect with the widest audience possible. So that's the second part. And then finally is, what are the fundamental financial levers of your business? How much are you charging? How much can you pay in advertising to acquire that client? Whether, and that the investment can come in the form of paid ads, hiring people to help you with organic content, and can come in the form of time, putting time in, reaching out to people, because that'll give you a clear blueprint as to whether your efforts are A, working, and B, scalable. There's so many companies that we work with, both startups and multi-billion-dollar companies, that really don't understand the financial levers that drive scale in business. So I would say those are the three primary areas that I would focus on initially.
Those are phenomenal starting points and just really, really helpful, because I resonate with those, and those key points that you gave really helped me when I'm started. I mean, I've got a lot to learn. I've got a long way to go, but I think those are something to really keep a focus on and really mastering those fundamentals as we scale and go forward. So I just want to close by saying, first, thank you for your time and for sharing all of this incredible wisdom. It's just really, really astounding that you have created and made such impact in so many lives, and taking what their message is and allowing that to reach the people that need it most. And I'm going to take another thing that you preached in your book and put it into practice. You always say you need to over deliver on your clients. You need to over deliver and provide massive value. So this podcast, this interview was just phenomenal. Like, what you shared was just, I'm going to be listening to this myself and taking mad notes. But I also want to make sure that people can connect with you and really get your value. So guys, if you share this podcast episode, all right, and tag me at the Fit Pharmacist and tag Brendan, where are you most active on social media?
I would say Instagram is, I mean, Instagram and Facebook, but Instagram is kind of where I can see the messages and the tagging the most.
Excellent. And can you share your handle for where people can tag you on your Instagram?
At Brendan Kane.
At Brendan Kane. Guys, I will have that. But if you share this episode, tag myself, the Fit Pharmacist, tag Brendan Kane, I will be giving away copies of his book, Hook Point, so that you can get even more value. His message, his methods work. And literally, this is the kind of book you want to read annually because it has so much value. The more you read it, the more things are going to be unveiled to you. So I want to close and just saying thank you again for your time, for sharing everything. I really believe in your message. It's helped me tremendously. That's why I was so passionate in getting this interview, so I could help to share your message with the people in healthcare in our audience. So thank you so much for your time, man. Can you also just share, if people do want to connect with you, possibly even hire you, where can they best connect with you online? Where can they read your books and everything else?
Yeah, I would recommend going to hookpoint.com. So there they can get access to the book. They can schedule a call with our team if they want to work with us or myself. And we have a masterclass on there. So I would recommend just starting with hookpoint.com.
Hookpoint.com. Excellent, guys. Well, hey, this has been absolutely phenomenal. And personally, like, this was honestly a dream. This made my entire day because I really admire all the work you do. And it's really helped me tremendously. Seriously, man. Thank you so much for all that you do, that for your clients and for the work that you put out. It has helped me tremendously. So guys, this is Dr. Adam Martin of the Fit Pharmacist Healthcare Podcast, signing off with the one and only Brendan J. Kane. Go forth, be great, and dispense your full potential.
I see my victory so clear. I see my victory so clear. It's a day we break through. It's a day we break through. It's a day we break through. It's a day